Leeloo Schindelhauer, thank you so much for joining us today, all the way from Germany. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm in the south of Germany. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Fantastic. I know that we kind of told everybody a little bit about who you are already, but please share with our listeners what it is that's drawn you to space. Like, how did you get involved and why do you love it?
I think I've always been fascinated with STEM, but there have been a lot of people in my surroundings that just encouraged me to follow my passions. And I think the first time I really knew that space was the thing for me was I went with my parents to Kennedy Space Center when I was really, really small, and just the rockets and the exhibits and everything was so awesome. And from then it was space, space, space.
Right. So tell us a little bit about then. So you get inspired as a young child here in the States at Kennedy Space Center, but you did your schooling back in Germany. So
Yeah.
what were some of the areas of focus? Like we kind of see STEM education here, but what is it like going to a STEM kind of focused school in Germany?
I think it's really different. For example, everyone in Germany has to take math every year in high school until the last year. And you actually have to do an exam at the end of your school in math. And I got the opportunity to take a lot of extra courses. So I had an astronomy course in my 11th grade. I think that would be junior year. So it was really interesting because we had a lot of robotics in my class. We had a bit of more math because it was a STEM math-based class that I went into. And we had a lot of physics. And then when I got into junior year, I basically chose to have a specific focus on math and physics, but I also took like an informatics class. So I basically got to choose a lot of my curriculum, which isn't really that common before junior year. And yeah.
So you were able to kind of dabble and kind of go into different areas that might not have been exposed to otherwise, that kind of opened up some possibilities for you, it sounds like.
Definitely. I do think that even though I had this focus on STEM, I also took some courses that might not be related to STEM. I had 2 years of geography, for example, but still, I did have the focus on STEM.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. With respect to your career path, are there lots of German students in the lane that you are? Is there a strong STEM focus in Germany, or are there equal numbers of, let's say, liberal arts students and whatnot? I guess I'm curious about how important is STEM in the German education system. We're trying to get more students and more diverse students in our pipeline here, but how would you describe the German education system and their emphasis on STEM?
I do think that it's quite equal. I think there's a focus on German engineering. I mean, it's quite well known all around the world.
Yes.
So there are special universities that mainly focus on STEM, and then there are others that have a bigger focus on the liberal arts and things like that. So I do think that they managed to get quite a lot of people interested in STEM. And there are other opportunities. For example, there's a day once a year where especially girls can go into male-dominated fields and have like an internship day, which is really interesting to see how your future career might look like, even if everyone you see that has the job currently is a man. And
right. Are there in the US for a long time, well, in let's say the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, almost all men, right? But in the last, let's say 30, 40 years, that trend is changing, more women, more people of color. Are there still areas of your industries and society that are really heavily male dominated? Is that still the case, or are you seeing a similar pattern as we are in the US?
I mean, it's getting better, especially in the STEM focused fields. What you do see is that social careers are typically done by women. So we do have a lot more female teachers and nurses, but it is getting better. And right now in my in my course at university, I think we have about 30 to 40% women. So it's
Good.
still more men, but we're getting there.
Right. I would say that one field of STEM that has a really probably the more robust number of females would be in like the life sciences, biological research, medical research, biomedical engineering. Do you see a similar trend in Germany?
Yes, you do. But I do think that also women are encouraged to go into all kinds of STEM fields. In the physics course that I took, which has a like really specific, only people who are already thinking about going into STEM careers take that course. We had 5 out of 12 women. So we're getting there, but I also have experienced that when I was in elementary school and I told everyone I like math, and they looked at me like I'm an alien and were like, wait, a girl who likes math?
Right.
I know. I
That's great.
experienced kind of like that myself, but it's bizarre. I'm obviously at least 2, generations prior with school than you are. But at least we're making some progress there. I want to talk a little bit about your interaction in some of the competitions and the conferences that you mentioned. So I know you are at university now, but between the time that you were in high school and you knew what you wanted to be and you're off to university, you participated in a couple of different competitions. So share with us about what those were and how that kind of reinforced that love of space for you.
Okay, so in my last year of high school, I participated in the European Space Settlement Design Competition, and I qualified for the internationals. And so when I was already finished with school, but not yet in university, I went there and I managed to get there in person, even though there was still a travel ban.
That sounds like a story I'm going to have to hear at some point. But
sure. and so basically, I went there, and in this package that they had to prepare us to go there, they wrote, well, there's going to be a space conference right before you have your competition, and there's going to be like, you're going to watch a rocket launch, and you're going to have a guided tour by a space shuttle engineer through the Kennedy Space Center. And I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
And so I also went to the first time that Space Rush happened, and
that's right. That's when we met you, as a matter of fact, was at that Space Rush conference. I want to go back to your design competition for a second. So we've done a few space settlement competitions here as well, but I'm interested in finding out, like, what did you specialize in an area of that settlement, like something that you were focusing on particularly? You worked in a larger group. How did that competition work as far as, was it a team aspect and then the individual parts?
I mean, it's structured quite similar to the space settlement competitions in the US, because it's a qualifier for the internationals. So I was the head of the structural department, and I did have a little bit of a focus. I did some of the radiation protection for the settlement, which was really interesting because we were on Europa, where there's a lot of radiation, and the settlement was underneath ice. So we were calculating how much ice we need between the settlement and the surface to keep us safe. And it was really interesting because my company lost the election, but I got elected by my teammates to be the one person representing our company that lost to the internationals. So I'm really honored that they gave me that opportunity.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm going to pivot slightly. 2 questions, and you may answer them as you see fit. But what right now is the one subject area that most inspires you, that you really, if you say, if I could do this for a living, this is the exact area of STEM that I'd like to be in? And then the follow-up question is, could you describe your ideal job when you do graduate? What is that ideal perfect job you'd like to have?
I mean, in the broader area of STEM, my field is definitely aerospace. I especially the space part. And I mean, the ideal job when I would graduate is becoming an astronaut, but I know that's hard.
Right. What within space, though, is the very specific. You mentioned you were a structures team lead, right? Is it the design, fabrication, manufacturing of space structures? Are you more about ECLS or propulsion or guidance? Can you narrow it down even more for us?
I do think that structures and especially settlements interest
Okay.
me because I mean, I did an internship at the DLR when I was in school, and they were, I was in the area that was focusing on like space exploration. So they had more to do with like probes getting out there into space. And I do also find that really interesting because space exploration is fascinating.
Oh, I know.
The VDLR is there's the space agency there in Germany.
Yes, it's the German space agency.
Right. I just read recently that ESA is trading, I want to say 6 of the components that they make for the SLS rocket. I want to say it's like the service module, in exchange for 3 seats on Artemis, right? So, and the hope is, and I know the Europeans are hoping that one of those seats will be taking them down to the surface of the moon, so a European will be able to walk on the moon. But I don't think NASA promised them a ride down to the surface. But I know there's this really nice relationship right now between ESA, of which the German Space Agency is a member, with NASA. Do Germans get excited about the potential for returning back to the moon?
Oh, definitely. I think especially in the community where I'm currently at, because all my friends love space. A lot of them are also studying the same thing that I do. So of course they're getting excited. There's going to be a watch party for the launch tomorrow. We're all completely hyped. And I think it would be really awesome to see someone from Europe stepping foot on the moon. I mean, it would be even more awesome if I could go there.
You or you, right? Yeah, right.
Yes.
But I guess I'm a bit too young. So maybe when it comes to stepping foot on Mars.
Mars, right?
I actually think you're in the window for Mars, right?
Yeah.
Maybe when you're in your 40s, right? There's an advantage to sending maybe a little bit older folks because of the radiation damage. And if you're already past the age where you've had your families, right? I don't want to say they prefer old people, but you definitely—
I don't know. Ray Bradbury wrote a lot of stories about those on Mars.
You definitely don't want those young kids with those rapidly dividing cells, because the mutations, you can have more profound mutation effects. So with the excitement of ESA, I was at a dinner recently and we were discussing how Europe is going to pivot, because in the past, ESA would work with both Russia and the US, but now Russia is sort of on the, the blacklist for partnering with space projects. Are you aware, or could you speak to how Europe, how the ESA maybe is pivoting, or maybe the German Space Agency, with the absence of the rockets that the Russians used to provide?
I mean, I'm not in the industry yet, so I don't have any like inside information, but I can just see that at the moment here in Europe, everyone is looking on ways to distance themselves from Russia, to get more independent, for very obvious reasons. And this also, of course, affects the space industry, because I think there are like restrictions. You cannot export anything that is related to aerospace to Russia, or get things from Russia. So I think they're kind of forced to pivot, to be honest.
Do you have a launch site yet? I know that the Europeans launch from South America, but is there any talk of having a more local launch site? For instance, the Brits and the Scots, the UK, they're looking to put in launch facilities. How about the Germans? Wouldn't it be great if you had your own launch site?
It's actually quite funny, because for my final exams, I wrote a short paper on the possibilities of having a launch site in Germany. And there were talks, and the politicians at the time, I think it was in 2018, 2019, they were really enthusiastic and saying, yeah, we're gonna have a micro launcher site in Germany. And there are 2 sites in the northern part of Germany where you could have a horizontal takeoff with a plane, and then when you're over the Atlantic or the Baltic Sea, you could then launch a rocket from there. And they were really enthusiastic, and it looked like everything would go super well. And then COVID hit, and the politicians had other priorities. So it kind of stopped being talked about so much. And especially because at the moment, we don't have the laws that would kind of give the framework on what is allowed and how you could launch something like that. So the locations are really good, and they could be used not for vertical takeoff because we're quite densely populated here in Europe, and that would pose a risk. But for the horizontal takeoff, those places would work. And there was a study done by ESA and DLR, I think, that also said, well, those places would be okay, but in the end, it's because of the laws that are not there yet.
So are they going to push it back? I mean, is the thing, the laws aren't there yet? I mean, is there still that movement, like it could still happen, or is it just something that's on hold? Or
I have no idea. They were talking a lot about it, and then it kind of got forgotten. They were talking about having the legislation in process, but then there was an election, and well,
that always messes it up when things change.
I think this is probably the result of some laws that were written at the end of World War II, right? Often, I know with Japan, for instance, they were so aggressive, when we had the war, that after the war, we helped them create this constitution and laws that says you can have only a self-defense kind of military. And I know that Japan had to work for a number of years to get to the point where they had their orbital space program, right? But they have the advantage that you don't, of having the large Pacific Ocean to let their failed rocket launches fall on and not hurt anyone. Did you look at orbital inclinations with your launch site profile, the report that you did?
I did not. It was more geography based and looking at like the immediate surroundings. And actually the laws holding it back are kind of environmental laws, because it's not specified what kind of tests you have to do before you get qualified for building a launch site, because it hasn't been done before.
So you don't have a pathway for setting up the launch site.
Yes.
You don't have a legislative pathway. Got it.
Yeah, and also in addition to that, it's not really clear what would happen in the case of an accident and things like that. So that's kind of holding it back right now.
Well, I'm going to go back now. You're in your first year or second year?
I'm now just finishing my first year. So
finishing up in aerospace engineering, right?
Yes.
So we have, we've talked to a few other aerospace engineering students before, but we have students who listen in who are thinking that this might be a possible career choice for them, right? What can a typical first year student, and I know that there may be some differences between here and there, but what can a first year aerospace engineering student expect to see?
Lots of work. So basically, at least in Germany and at my university, it's kind of set in stone which courses you have to take. Especially because we don't have this kind of orientation year that a lot of the colleges in the US have, where you have a lot of like humanities and more general subjects, because we do that already in school. So basically our first year we had university math, we had mechanics, we had we had electrical engineering, materials engineering, we had computational foundations, where we learned a lot about like programming and coding. So they kind of gave us all the basics. And then one of my favorite courses was Introduction to Aerospace, where in the 14 lectures that we had, every time there was a different professor telling us basically on a very basic level what we could expect working in industry. So they were talking about their specialities. So one of our professors was talking about drones and how they can, and the kind of drones that he develops. And another one was talking about propulsion. And we had one that was talking about the future of aviation and like how we can make it green. And it was really interesting. Not a lot of like very deep learning, but just to have this overview of what the future might bring.
It was a fantastic survey from aviation to deep space exploration, right?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't do a lot of like deep space exploration, and we didn't talk a lot about satellites, because now at the start of the second year, we're going to have introduction to geodesy. So I think we're going to have a bit more of like satellites watching Earth then. But we had some rockets, and fortunately one of our professors was an astronaut, so he could tell us a bit about his flights to space, how he became an astronaut. And
does this professor have like rock star status among the faculty and students? Is he esteemed a little higher?
Yeah, definitely.
Because there's so few German astronauts, right?
I think there are actually like 11 or so. So it's
great.
I mean, yes, they are quite. They're not a lot, not as many as the US has.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that was. You know, I don't want to get into a political discussion, but I'm thinking that was probably designed that way. We'll keep it all together.
No, it was the US, you know, when they were building the space station, they literally, you know, plussed up the astronaut corps to like 150 or more because they needed so many missions, right, to build the ISS. And yeah, if you have the launch capacity, right, if you had a rocket, you'd be able to send all the German, you know, astronauts up you wanted. But yeah, it was just who had the launch capacity
and the money, right?
What do you see from your seat as a college student? What do you see, and what do you think about the future of space, the future of human exploration? And this is an opinion question. What do you think? And based on, you know, where you've been in class and what you've been taught.
I'm really excited for the next 10, 20, 50 years. Because I think we're entering a time where it's getting really, really exciting. And then at the other hand, I think if you look in Europe, you will find a lot more critical opinions of the commercialization of space, because especially from like the European perspective, I think we might want to have a bit more regulation at some points, because we fear that with a lot of space debris, we might shoot ourselves in the foot. So I do think that we're entering really exciting times, and I can't wait to see where it's going. And especially when you look at what is happening in the classes and what the professors are telling us, I think people my age and like the years above, and like the people who are in high school now, we're the prime target for participating in this awesome time period. And I think we're really lucky that we were born at the time that we were born.
I so agree.
It's a good cohort.
My final question to you is this. Are your classes, like your aerospace classes, are they taught to you in German or in English?
The classes are taught in English. My university is really looking to get more international people. I think in my year we have people from 41 different countries.
Wow.
And what they're trying to say to us is, well, the aerospace industry, it's a global industry, and if you want to participate, you're going to have to speak in English. And well, if you learn all the terminology in German and you then have to relearn it on the job again, you're wasting a lot of time.
I just want to congratulate you on I really enjoyed this conversation. So I appreciate you speaking so well about these topics.
Well, and we always close out with, you know, we're keeping in mind our listeners. So if there are students out there, they're maybe in high school, as we talked about, what advice would you give to someone like yourself coming behind you, whether it's a young woman in the field, you know, even younger than you, about sticking in this field? What advice?
I think the biggest advice that I would give you is that if people are mean to you because you like STEM, you will find your people. It will get better, and just pursue your goal, because in the end you can reach the stars, and that's so amazing that I do think that nobody should take that from you by not understanding how awesome that is.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We really appreciate it. We're so glad that we got to meet you at Space Rush, and we look forward to working with you and watching you as you continue to reach your goals and dreams.
Yes.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome. And down the road, a couple of years, we want to follow up with you to learn about what great projects you're working on. And yes, and I agree with my colleague. Thank you so much.
Thank you.